Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do a really interesting and hopefully informational video about Polymer Clay 101. A lot of people think that polymer clay is difficult and it's hard to get into, but I'm here to show you guys that anyone can get started and it takes just a few materials and the interest to begin. That's probably one of the reasons I put it off so long, so I kind of want to introduce it and show you guys it's easy. Today we'll have a quick introduction to polymer clay, what it is, and how to use it. Then we'll go over the different types of clay. Then we'll have a section regarding tools that are needed, just the basic tools, and then additionals that you might want to invest in. What is polymer clay? Polymer clay is a plastic-based clay that can be used for many things such as charms, jewelry, and miniatures. You also have to bake it. How to use it? Polymer clay is extremely versatile and can even be used in liquid form. We have Fimo, and Fimo is notable by its blocky square shape. It's one of the bigger clays, and it does have these ridges, whereas Primo, the ridges aren't so deep, and Sculpey barely has them, but they're spaced apart. You can tell right away. And you can see it's kind of getting dry, so I will make videos on how to fix this. But this is Fimo, which is in between. If you want to do intermediate works, you can get this after Sculpey, I would suggest. Again, this is great for various charms, such as miniatures and food. And Fimo has a lot of variety. They have the sparkly clay, the translucent clay. So if you want to do a lot of effects and for a variety of projects, Fimo is very good. And I believe these go for around the same price, around $3.19 a block, I believe. And you can get the bigger blocks for cheaper, and the specialty clays, I think, are the same price. So that's good. Next, we have Primo clay. So this is the only one I still have in the packaging. And as you can see, this is one of the more higher end ones. It's even more expensive than Fimo. But if you're making miniatures and you're a little bit more proficient with polymer clay and you want to make something more realistic or have clay that's more malleable and durable, I would prefer you guys buy Primo. This is also about $3.30 a block, and there's not a price difference, but it does add up when you buy a lot. And this brand does have some effect clays like sparkly and metallic, but not as much as Fimo. And you guys can see there's lots of colors in the store and you can select it. Again, the ridges here look a little bit different than the Fimo clay as well as the shape, but they're all pretty much similar in terms of usability. The last block I have to show you guys is Sculpey, which is great for beginners and which is what I personally started with. Again, it looks like this. It's about the same shape as Primo clay, and this goes for about $2.99 a block, but you can find deals and coupons if you go to certain craft stores. Again, these are the same type, but they're easier. Sculpey, I believe, is the original brand, and again, you can use it for similar things such as miniatures and food, anything you pretty much want. This is a little bit harder to control because it is a beginner clay, but I think it's a great way to get started. And all three of the clays have different instructions on how to bake and how long, so you have to read it on the packaging. Sculpey I use with everything. I can make the charms, use TLS to make frostings and different effects, liquids, anything I want pretty much. And it's a more affordable clay as well. If you want to start off with this, I highly suggest it. So tool number one, I guarantee you guys have an old one lying around, and that is the toothbrush. So obviously don't use the one that you guys brush with, but just get another one. You guys can see this is really used up, but in a good way. The bristles on the toothbrush just provide a really nice texture, and you can use it simply directly on your clay and just press down. You can use it to texture a lot of pastries like cookies and cakes, and you can use this in addition to other tools like sandpaper. As you can see, this is an obvious overlooked one, but some sort of surface to work on. This does look dirty, but it's just chalk pastels and clay. This is literally a wooden floor sample that I received that I have been using to work with my clay charms. Anything, I've seen people use parchment paper, acrylic blocks, anything where your clay doesn't stick onto it would be useful. Any type of mats or surfaces that won't cause your clay to stick. Next tool are these dotting tools, and I'm just showing you guys two as an example, but there's many kinds, and you can see they're just round tips and they come in different sizes. The pink one is the smallest, and then there's a green one. The other side also has it, and these are just really easy to create indents and designs. And even if you're adding stuff onto your charms like eyes or any other detailing, you can use these to indent, and then you can add them onto your charms. In addition, you can also use these as texturers, because since they do have the round tip at the top, you can use it to create bumps and different lines on your charms. Here I have an X-Acto knife, and if you guys don't know what these are, they're just blades and they are detachable at the top by twisting them. They just have a really nice sharp corner, and you can cut shapes out using the tip, or you can just cut slices of clay and pieces that you need. And it's just really sleek and sharp and easy to use. You can also replace the blade. So I would say this is pretty useful in terms of any types of clay charms you want to make. Going along with that is this long blade, and I'm sure you can make do with just one, but sometimes I even use both of these sides. So this side is blunt. As you can see, this is the top, and you can use it to just separate clay. And then this is the blade itself. It's very thin and very easy to use to kind of just cut your clay into larger pieces, and you can bend it. So you can shape the clay before cutting it, so it's easier for big pieces of clay, whereas X-Acto knives are good for details. This part, as you can see, is a very sharp, so be careful. The bottom is very thin, and that's usually what I use to cut portions of clay kind of into rectangles or squares and make use of the long blade. Then we have a roller used to roll clay. I've had many rollers in my life, and I don't even think this is a roller. I think this was a container. So any cylindrical shape will work to just roll your clay out into the shape you need. I used to have a pasta machine, but that's definitely not necessary, especially when you're just getting started. You can kind of see it, but for just the example, you can use any cylindrical object just to roll out the clay into the thickness that you want and make it flat before turning them into your charms. Lastly, for the essential tools, I would say something else you have in your house or you can easily get even at a restaurant would be a toothpick. So this corner part you can use to texture your food pieces like crumbs or cake, or you can use it to create dots to add facial features. You'd be surprised how much toothpicks really do come in handy. I would prefer a needle tool, but just to get started, a toothpick is just enough. It will be a little thick, but it'll do the job to get started. So next up, we have these two cute little bottles. One is Fimo Deco Gel and one is Sculpey Bacon Bond. So these are not required, but they are helpful. You can see this is used really well. Fimo Deco Gel is a translucent liquid that can be mixed with various things such as chalk pastels or acrylic paint to create a liquidy consistency. You can use it to create frostings or little details or even water, anything that imitates liquid but is also translucent. So Sculpey Bacon Bond has two purposes actually. One is to clearly bond items together. Even after baking, if your clay breaks, you can use this like a glue and rebake it. The other use for it is also to mix it with acrylic paint or chalk pastels, create a liquidy consistency. This is great for frostings because it's not see-through. So you can use it to add decorations to your cakes, cookies, and of course bond things together. You can also use this to create details like designs or faces. Now moving on to non-essential tools, which I classify as tools that would be helpful but not necessary to get started. One is another texturing element, which is sandpaper. You can see a lot of these tools you can just reuse forever. This is a piece of sandpaper I've had for about 10 years actually. So you can put your charms on here if you're making a cookie, for example. When you're texturing the top, the bottom will get textured. You can use another sandpaper or a toothbrush, and it'll keep the texture from going. Also, you can see the little detailing will create textures that perhaps a toothbrush might not be able to capture. Next, we have these sculpting tools that are not even meant for polymer clay, but for paint, I believe. And as you can see, they each have different tips, which are great for blending the clay pieces, like these two and these two have different functions. This can create points that are thicker, and this is good for melding together flat objects. And they all have their own names, as you can see, the fine chisel going down, the taper point, the cut chisel, and the cup round. So these are just different blending tools that are not essential, but they can definitely help reduce fingerprints, and they are more functional than using your fingers. Next, I have this clear, I guess, glass box. It came in a set of about 5, and this just helps flatten down the clay if you don't want to roll it out and it's a small piece. So you can put it on your clay and press down. You can also use this as a surface to work on with smaller pieces of clay so they don't fall off, and add it to your charms. Here I have eye pins of various colors and lengths because you can just cut them down. So there's gold and there's silver. And again, after your charms are done, before baking them, you can just stick these in. These are easier to use but less sturdy. I'll briefly go over other things I use, but I can make a separate video. So this here is my little jar. It's just a mason jar and it's airtight. Any vacuum sealed or airtight container will work. And as you can see, it holds all my scrap clay. You will go through a lot of scrap clay as you're making the charms, and you might not have use for it then. But if you ball it up and you just keep it in a container, you can use it later to fill up a space that's not seen, or you might need a color, or you can mix the colors together to make your intended color, and you can save a lot of clay that way. There's also a lot of random household materials that you can use, like toothpicks and this pill box actually. I sometimes use this to keep my findings in, like my eye pins and charms that aren't baked if I don't want it exposed to air and dust. And it opens up really easily, like so. Or you could just use it to mix TLS or the bacon bond with your frosting flavors, and that way it won't dry up. So you can just keep it in here. So after you mix it with your colorings, you can keep it for multiple uses if you don't finish it. Lastly, we'll go over the coloring you can add for the charms, either before or after baking. First up, I have these chalk pastels. It's a little bit hard to see in this bag. I would recommend storing them separately because you can see the colors kind of got on each other, but it's fine. You can use these chalk pastels to shape them down and add shading to your charms. You can get these in a whole pack at the store, and for me at least, usually the brown shades help to make pastries, but you can use the coloring to shade ombre or add blush or add other colorings to your charms. There are many examples, but here is a lion candy cookie charm I made, and I used chalk pastels by shaving them down and shading them so you can see there's different shades of brown so it looks baked and realistic. After baking, you can use various paints such as gouache or acrylic like I have here to add details, facial features, and anything else you want to your charms. You can even water it down and add effects. Here I have one example of a bear egg tart charm, and the eyes and the little red cheeks were made using acrylic brown and red paint. So you can do this after baking and seal it with glaze. And that is pretty much it for Polymer Clay 101. Consider this part 1 because there's a lot more I could show you guys. Please comment down below what else you'd like to see. I can do videos on how to keep your clay clean, or how to make it more cost effective, or even some beginner tutorials. I hope this video was a nice introduction to how polymer clay is a great craft and anyone can do it. Doesn't have to be expensive, it doesn't have to be intimidating, and my biggest suggestion would just to be getting started, and then you'll fall in love with it. So in the comments below, please leave any other questions you might have, and I would be happy to make another video. See you guys later! Here I'm showing you guys all of the different clays and different types of tools at Michael's. It can be really overwhelming at the store, but just keep in mind you don't need all the colors because you can mix it, and you don't need all of these tools. They're optional, and you can also use whatever you have at home. In addition, you can get starter packs with all the clay. So just begin.